YouTube, iFixItAll here, Team iFixItAll. So let's give you a little update. I got me a timing cover laying here where I'm dropping bolts in as I take the timing cover bolts out. And yeah, we did break off a bolt. This one right here. But I'm after this thing inside there that's shaped like this. Yeah. Let's take a look at our oil we drained out. Let's get some some light reflection off of it. That's straight out of the oil pan. Now what I'm going to do is, by the way, kind of felt bad using this. So it's some antique refrigerator. It was like a veggie or crisper drawer. But, you know, at iFixItAll, we repurpose everything. Hang on, and I'm going to do a metal particulate test. Hang tight. Alright, so what I got here is a telescoping magnet. You know, when you think you can't do something, figure it out. What do you need to know? Do you have metal shavings? What it won't pick up on is what the bearings is made of, which is like a tin coated copper or solder coated, a variation of solder coated copper shims per se that goes between the engine block and the crankshaft, engine block and camshaft, crankshaft and connecting rods. So we're looking for metallic, no, we're looking for magnetic metal stuff. So I'm just going to wave this through here and let it drip off, and we'll check back in on it some other time. And then I'll also strain this through a strainer. By the way, hang on. Yeah, so I'll strain my oil through this. Just in case you did not know, you can pretty much get these for free at Napa or wherever you're buying your automotive paint. It's made to pour into your empty container or your spray gun you're going to use to filter out the microns of particulates. But you can tell it's real fine mesh right there. Now, I bring this up because these things are probably useful for other things around the house. But there's a decent stack of them I've got. But I'll strain this oil out, and then we'll see if we've got any copper. But for now, we'll just let this guy sit right here for a few hours. We'll check back on him. Back to the car. Yeah, so I broke a bolt off. It's right there. I'll have to deal with that. Here is the bolt. And I wire wheeled it off. You can see the threads on the end there. Overall, the bolt shank, which is the smooth part, isn't as corroded as I had expected. And I was adding a generous amount of heat right back in pointer. I need something to point with. right back in there where the timing cover meets the engine block. I mean, a crap ton of heat. And I don't know if that's accurate or not, because that's what I was using for heat. So, I mean, it was a blue flame. It just didn't want to break loose. So, judging from the bolt that I see, the bolt broke flush with the block, I think. So, I got work to do. But for now, I'm going to work on getting this crank pulley off. Hang tight and I'll get you guys suspended in your little bouncy chair here. Hang tight. So let's see about getting this harmonic balancer crankshaft pulley system taken off. First thing we got to do is get that bolt out. Oh, Fraggle Rock. I'll add some heat. Hang on. Let's see what happens. See what happens. Find somewhere for it to sit. Maybe I can use this rag. Now I wait. Well, it's been a little while. I got steam coming up back there. I would expect that. Let's give it another crack. Alright, there's only one thing left to do. So I'm going to have to put a socket on here, a breaker bar, and an extension pipe. And then I'm going to have to go back there and put the flywheel in a jam back at the transmission. And I'm wanting to go counterclockwise, so I have to make sure that the flywheel cannot turn counterclockwise back there. Let me see if I can give you an example. Party break. Cookies. So what do we got here, Brittany?
All right. It is. It is. I can't follow a recipe because I need to mess with them. So, it's based off of an applesauce cookie. Only I used pumpkin instead. Swapped out all the spices for vanilla. Swapped out half the sugar, the regular white sugar, for brown sugar. And,
bring me another one.
and made a soft chocolate chip cookie instead.
Jesus Christ, that's good. Alright, I needed that. We just hit a roadblock, so. There's very few good women left in the world. I got me one. Before I go back to the transmission, which is, God, there's protective covers over top of the flywheel. I'm going to try something different. I took the harmonic balancer pulley off. Of course, I marked its orientation just in case that becomes important later. So I bolted on the same way. which this isn't balanced. This is the balancer. And by the way, a harmonic balancer is a center chunk of iron with a rubber gasket here, and then another chunk of iron, and this is pressed on precisely, and this item here is marked with your timing marks. But I'm going to try something a little bit different. I'm going to get a breaker bar here, and I'm going to try to use these bolt holes and a couple of bolts and orientate this in such a way to where I can use the floor rotating counterclockwise as my leverage point. Screw a couple of these in there. Let me get that set up, and I'll be right back. So it looks like my the position my crankshaft is in right now allows me to position my breaker bar. This pad right here is that way on the floor, and I can feed this in like so, and I want to be as close up to there as possible. Tap that down a little bit. I fully expect to bend the bolts. I don't want to damage my harmonic balancer threads. Let's see if I've got a socket clearance. I do. Take the socket out with my socket extractor. And let's get a breaker bar. If I can even, oh, there it is. I fully expect to damage this a little bit. Who the heck makes this? Craftsman. Warning, wear eye protection. Did you hear that? It's kind of like wear gloves. Alright. So, I'm clocked like that. I'm probably going to have to put a pipe on the end of this, and I may end up having to take that water pump out to get more clearance. Let's see what I can do. Hang on. So here's a metal bracket that came off of a satellite dish. And it's hollow. But as you can see, it's going to be proving useful to put it on the end of my breaker bar. But I believe before I do any of this, I'm going to go back to adding heat, because I know I'm going to need heat, and oh man, that's going to be so ridiculous. That water pump's probably got to go. I'm just inches away from taking it off anyway. I need the clearance. Maybe so. It's got to come off anyway. Alright. Now, if you didn't have a spare timing cover, you could sketch you out something. I forgot to mention, I pulled my accessory bracket off to the side, but there was a boat ton of hardware. And so, for my own reference, I did me a quick etch and sketch here of what's what. And I call this power steering, and I have a bracket. I'm calling out an N is for nut, And then that's a B bolt, and I made a note of 1 inch. And that's a nut, that's a nut, that's a bolt, 5.5 inches, that's a bolt 5.5, that's a bolt 5.5, which matches this entire ordeal sitting over here, so that later on when I bolt things up, I know where stuff goes. And the hardware associated with that entire bracket is in a bag right here. And I should have already by now zip tied it to this assembly, but I'll get to it. I think I can just put it there for now. But for the timing cover bolts, I'm using this as my jig. You could cut something out of cardboard and take your bolts out and drop them in. Why aren't you loose? You should be loose. Huh? Okay. Wrong socket. What's up with you? I thought you were broke loose already. I already told everybody in YouTube I only broke 1 bolt. Oh yeah, it's loose. It just feels sketchy. I'll bust that water pump off of there and I'll have more clearance. Now back to this harmonic balancer bolt. That's a critical connection when it comes to rotating parts. So I'm pretty damn sure Ford used their $5 million per ounce specialty Loctite thread locker. That's why I said I need to add heat first, because when you add heat, you end up semi-melting that material that is locking the fastener down. A lot of times you'll find in drive shaft universal joints that do not have clips, that they are injected in the journals of the universal joint. There's an injection point of plastic. You won't know. It's like on a Ford Ranger, like the 90s Ford Rangers. I refer to that because I remember doing that to a Ranger doing U-joints. Now the aftermarket U-joint would come with clips, and the journals of the drive shaft would accommodate clips, but from the factory they didn't use any clips. In the side of the journal there's a pinhole that's drilled, and it's injection molded with a bead of plastic around on the interior of that journal. And you don't know you have that kind until you sandpaper down the journal of your drive shaft universal joint, the yoke, you know, the loop that holds the U-joint cap. You sand it down with sandpaper real quick, and you'll see a little tiny blue dot or something. That's because that blue dot is the plastic that's been injection molded into that hole, and it goes around the circumference of the U-joint cap. For all I know, that those threads could have molten plastic as well. So there's a bolt. They're in pretty good shape. So that'll go in my timing cover. Alright, there's no reason to be careful with these guys. What do we got here? I just need a tool. Lost the light. That's in pretty good shape. Now see, I can tell I was in there because this bolt here has anti-seize on it. That's because I did a water pump. The top of that water pump is stamped because I have a stamp kit, a metal stamp kit, and I stamped it 2016. So that tells me that's been on there since then. That's got anti-seize all over it too. There's memes all over the internet about anti-seize. Like once you get it on yourself, nothing takes it off. Methyl ethyl ketone, naphtha, gasoline, and it never dries. Let's see what we got here. Is that loose? Okay, water pump. You're outie. I think we'll just stick you down in this drip pan for a while. Doing a visual inspection to see if I see anything that looks sketchy. Now I think we can remove this out of the way. And I'll begin to add heat here. And I'm probably going to just let this heat for quite a while. And then use my breaker bar and my Hughes net bracket to extend the breaker bar, which will end up looking something like this. I don't have a lot of real estate right here, so I'll just pass it through the front of the camera. You've got this, which is 18 inches. And then you've got this, which is all those inches. I'm looking at about 3.5 foot worth of... Yeah. Let me add some heat, guys. BRB. For those of you who don't get what I'm doing right here, I've got the breaker bar going down at an angle and it's resting on the floor. I've installed 2 bolts in such a way that when I put a socket on that big bolt in there holding that harmonic balancer, and when I go counterclockwise with my effort, my breaker bar, this will keep the crankshaft in it'll keep it still, it'll keep it from rotating counterclockwise. And that's what I hope will work to break this loose. And then I can move forward with getting that timing cover off. I'll add, just in case I missed earlier the opportunity, I'm not using my hardware that came with, because I have a lot of these extra bolts, but I just don't want to risk hurting these bolts. I fully expect those bolts to have some give and bend a little bit. Those are grade 8, but they're going to bend. But there's 2 of them in the game, spreading that effort that I'm applying, which is, oh God, I don't know how many foot-pounds we want to talk about. I think the install foot-pounds on the bolt is, I think 90. But with the glue on the threads, the removal requirement in foot-pounds has got to be, I don't know, exponential. I'm not going to measure the unlocking tensile shear strength of that thread locker compound, but again, this has never been off since the car was assembled, so you have these problems you run into They're things just they're factory tight. Hang tight. Letting it heat up. Now, if you think about it, that bolt, I think that bolt is something like, I want to say it's more than 1/2 inch. It might be 9/16. The reason why you would have to add a lot of heat to break that glue loose is because that crankshaft is probably 1,000 times larger in mass compared to the bolt. So therefore, the bolt is screwed into the crankshaft, and the crankshaft is wicking all the heat off the bolt and keeping it cool. So I don't have a blowtorch system where I can overheat this, but I'm kind of glad I don't. I don't want to add that kind of heat and have that kind of risk in this garage of mine. So that's why I'm letting the heat set so long.